keep the metal faith alive.
Hey world, I am joined by the one and only Chris Steele. If you don't know who Chris is, he is of course Chuck's nephew. Now, Chris, the first time I became aware of you was when I saw you in a BC Rich video.
Right.
And I think that was the first time many people became aware of you. Could you talk about how that happened?
It was totally random, actually. I went to the NAMM show. BC Rich was undone the Chuck Schuldiner tribute model stealth, and I talked to one of the product managers, say, "Hey, would you guys like to have Chuck's actual stealth on display?" And they were 100% interested in that, of course. So I flew to Anaheim, and I was walking around this convention, and this guy from 360 Media said, "Hey, do you want to do an interview?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Have in 5 minutes." So, all right, I guess, yeah. And that's how it happened. I was extremely nervous, sweaty. I never get interviewed. It was strange.
If we talk about your relationship with your uncle.
And Chuck was more close than an uncle. He was like a father because, we're such a small family. My grandfather and my uncle were the only men in my life, so we were very close-knit. He wasn't some uncle that just visited for Christmas.
You were next to Chuck when he passed away.
I wasn't right next to him. I was in his front yard. You're never ready for it, but of course we saw it coming. It was the end of the road. I wish I could tell you something poetic about it. It's just reality.
So let's go back a bit earlier, before the time where we lost Chuck. Did you learn at the same time as Chuck about his illness?
I learned shortly afterwards. I know he picked me up from school early one day from high school and told me. And I'm pretty sure it was the day he was diagnosed. So I learned pretty much the same time he did.
So Chris, there's so many stories out there about what happened, what went wrong, what went right. But the most common story is that the healthcare system in that country screwed Chuck. But some people say it wasn't like that. It was the fact that Chuck's condition was so severe. I mean, what really happened, Chris?
It was a culmination of things. The healthcare system does suck. Chuck passed with almost $1 million in medical debt. But we all worked our ass off and paid for all this stuff cash. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, the MTV News interview was one of the reasons. Before he got that brain surgery, I think they wanted like a $150,000 deposit for the surgery. Oof. So then on MTV News, and the hospital heard that there was going to get some bad press about them, they said, "Okay, how about $70,000 down payment?"
Oh.
That was more doable. That's how we got around things. So yeah, Chuck didn't have insurance, but if you're strong enough, you can figure it out. That's what we did.
Does the family still carry the burden of that debt?
Not so much anymore. It took a while to close that out, but I think it's finally done.
Maybe you could talk about your earliest memory of Chuck.
I'll tell you about one particular memory I had that was really cool, and especially the timing. When he was sick and recovering from brain surgery, I ended up breaking my femur, one of the largest, hardest bones to break in your body. And the recovery process is pretty shitty because they either give you the option of being in traction for a month or being bedridden for 2 months with a titanium rod. So I chose being on a couch for 2 months. So Chuck's home recovering from surgery. I'm at his house, laid up on his couch. So we got to spend a lot of time together taking care of each other. That was awesome. And especially since, he ended up passing away shortly after. It was really cool. Chuck was like a nurse to me. And this man just recovered from brain surgery, comes home, he has to take care of his 15-year-old nephew. That was just really cool. I cherish that.
So you're fortunate enough to have had some wonderful moments with Chuck.
Yes.
And that's something that millions of other people wish they could have had, Chris, of course.
It's family, man. Yeah.
In terms of the support from the metal community, from the fans, how would you say it's been?
It's amazing. I don't think anybody else, any other genre of music has a fan base like metal does. You know what I mean? It's so passionate, and if you just open up and let the fans in and talk to them face to face, it gets even better. And we're lucky enough to do that with the Facebook page because it's getting quite large, but it's not to the point where we can't control it and to talk to everybody. I try to answer every question, as so does Eric, and I think everybody appreciates that.
Did Chuck have any sort of very close friends or bands that he was particularly fond of?
I know he always cared for the dudes from Testament quite a lot. I mean, there's a lot of bands out there that care for it, a lot he didn't, but I always remember the guys from Testament being around for some reason, especially when I was a little guy. I know there's a band called Wicked Ways that he was friends with a lot. They came around. I mean, there's probably guys that came around that if I saw them now, I know who they were, but back then when I was so young, it didn't click, you know?
How aware were you of your uncle when you were a child? How aware of what he was doing were you? Did you realize he was this sort of like big kind of metal dude? And
For sure, I knew that he was, quite successful, but I didn't know just how large it truly was, and like his place that he held in the whole thing. I didn't realize that.
so to you, he was just your uncle, and you guys liked to mess around and play. And
Yeah, he was my uncle that had an awesome job.
I've heard some awesome things about Chuck. I guess I've heard that he was a good cook.
Excellent and healthy too. Everything he made was super healthy, and it didn't taste like cardboard, which was nice.
So Chuck was into like organic stuff, natural stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right, so Chris, on the point of cooking, was there a particular dish that Chuck was really great at?
One thing that we always remember is definitely are his peanut butter cookies, and his how fluffy does that sound?
His peanut butter cookies.
Yeah, no, he made some awesome peanut butter cookies. He actually made some really killer beef jerky, believe it or not, too. Amazing.
Oh man.
But he always had all kinds of different recipes, all kinds of lasagnas and chicken. I mean, so much different stuff. He even made his own beer for a while, which was pretty cool. Richard Christie, like him and Chuck had this amazing sense of humor together. It's kind of like, you're a kid, you have one of those best friends that, totally gets your sense of humor, and you guys just act retarded around each other. And Chuck and I shared that kind of same sense of humor. We had our own little goofy songs together and stupid dances and handshakes we would do. Chuck and Richard used to prank call people a lot on the phone and stupid parody songs. And one thing that made me laugh a lot was Chuck played a couple parts in some of Richard's really stupid movies he did. Richard had this alter ego called T-Bag. His name was T-Bag, the bare-assed Carnal Knight. And Chuck played a couple of different characters in his movies.
Oh my god. Where are the videos for that, Chris?
I don't even know anymore. I have a VHS copy of one.
Oh, that has to get out there, Chris.
But Chuck's actor name was Buck Shadunda.
And these are funny films. These have got to be funny films. I mean,
they're terribly low. Like one of the cuts is like 2.5 hours long. They're hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, it's just the goofy stuff with Chuck and I, the sense of humor, the jokes, the inside jokes, all that stuff. That's the best memories.
Is there any chance that they're going to see the light of day, Chris?
When Richard was first starting out on Howard Stern and trying to get money together, I know he sold them on eBay.
Really?
Yeah, he did. He used to.
I've never heard anyone mention these films before.
Yeah, there was T-Bag, there was Legend, like it's all this kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, he used to sell them online. I don't know what happened with that, and there used to be clips too about them and stuff, but they're just gone now. I don't know if that has something to do with what he does for a living now. But yeah, you can't find it anymore. Like I said, I have one VHS somewhere. Yeah.
Oh man, if it's not too damning, to Chuck, you should definitely share some of that if you can find it. That would be amazing, Chris.
I'd bother that too. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Maybe you are or you aren't aware of this, Chris, but in a lot of pictures, Chuck can be seen with a very specific necklace. Do you know if there's a story behind it or if there's a deeper meaning? Because he wore it a lot.
That necklace, if you're referring to the one that's like a circular pendant-looking thing, it's actually a seed from the bottom of the ocean. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's a plant that grows deep in the bottom of the ocean. That's like a seed that washes up on the shore every now and then. I'm not sure where he got it, to be honest with you, but he loved it. I still have it, actually. It's packed away somewhere. I mean, it's seen better days, too. It's not really even a necklace anymore. It's pretty much just the seed.
One thing that fans can never get enough of is new content that has Chuck in it. And of course, that's very difficult to come by these days because there can never be any brand new content. But every now and again, you know, new pictures pop up, new interviews pop up. In fact, Eric said that he has plenty of hidden away content. So is there a chance that in the future we're going to see lots more pictures, videos? Because I know the one thing most of the world dies for is just videos of Chuck. People just want to see Chuck being himself.
Yeah, I think 100% that stuff will see the light of day. I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't. But like I said, Eric is very smart and knows when to release things and when not to. You know, there's an order to this thing. You know, and he does it in a very tasteful way. He likes to strike when the iron's hot. He knows when it's, like I said, when it's the right time to release this stuff. But yeah, especially I'd like to see that press junket he was doing with Eric in Europe. That was some awesome footage. You know, they're going through England and Berlin and France, and they're just cracking on each other. It's just so funny. And also, he's sitting there toward the end of the video. He's getting ready to get interviewed by Headbangers Ball, and it's just cool seeing Chuck sit at that throne of skulls and make jokes about it. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff I want to see get out there. And then also the human rehearsals would be pretty cool to release too. The stuff you see online on YouTube is a fraction of what there is.
But we have no idea when these things might come out. I think I've spoken to you about this before, Chris, but there's an interview with Chuck which is called basically The Last Interview. I guess it was on MTV. But it's so short. But in fact, the interview must have been longer. Do we know what happened with that?
I was there during the interview. And what can you say? It's MTV. It's self-explanatory. I mean, especially at that time, I think that's when Limp Bizkit was pretty hot, and so was Britney Spears. And yeah, as big as Chuck's story was, they're not gonna give much time to this dude. And it sucks because the guy who interviewed him was Kurt Loder. I don't know if you're familiar with Kurt Loder. He was on MTV News for a long time. I think he still is, but he was the guy on MTV that really wanted the real stories, the stuff with substance, you know. And he really fought for Chuck to get those few seconds, believe it or not. But the interview itself was well over an hour.
Do you have any idea if the original tapes still exist?
I would love if they did, but MTV is such a giant that's probably stored away somewhere, you know. And unfortunately, I know we did try to track it down at one point, and we just kind of kept it up on dead ends.
What were MTV just brushing you off? And
pretty much, yeah.
One thing I always loved about Chuck is his vocals. They weren't like low gutturals. They weren't like high highs. There was this sort of vicious middle ground that just sounded aggressive and brutal. And in my opinion, I've never heard another vocalist that does it like Chuck did.
I agree, and I think somebody who really nailed the description of that was Corpse Grinder. Like he talked about Chuck's singing style, and he's like, "That's how you should sing." Chuck didn't get right up on the mic. He would scream and growl, but you can understand what he's saying. It was pretty cool. And, he's very articulate in his scream, which I always loved.
It's unmatched, in my opinion.
That's kind of how our relationship came about, James. Just talking on Facebook, and now there's a DeathinHD blurb on every reissue. How amazing, man. I mean, like, there's the hand again.
That's one thing that I can talk about in my own personal experience. Like, I make a few videos just to keep the death name alive, and all of a sudden I get a package from the Schuldiner family, and for those people that can see, right there is Chuck's t-shirt. I mean, when you were with Chuck, you used to dance, you used to play, you used to do silly things. There's a tribute video that I think your family made.
Yeah.
And in that video, you can see Chuck in that t-shirt. And you and him are doing that that dance, man. So I can say that in my personal experience, like, your family are extremely special, Chris.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, yeah, I'm very aware of the fact that you've given me credits in the albums, and I've always felt sort of undeserving of that, but at the same time, extremely grateful,
Yeah, and you're not undeserving, and there's a handful of guys in the back of that album who weren't there originally. Like, Derek Petrovich and Jokin and you. These are guys that are passionate about this, and passionate in a realistic and not creepy way. And make your contributions, and you bust your ass. Yeah, so no, you guys are very deserving of it.
So there's a few passionate people in a creepy way.
There always is. There's these, Eric used to get emails after he did an interview. So all he said in the interview was that Chuck was a normal guy. And there's certain people out there that look at Chuck like almost mystically, like he's a demigod almost. And they were offended that Eric called him a normal guy. So that's the kind of stuff that gets a little out there,
But as Chuck's nephew, I mean, I'm sure you can speak a little bit for Chuck. How would Chuck want to be known by the people?
Just as a fan and as a contributor to the music he loves. He doesn't want to be He doesn't want to be idolized. No way.
So he'd want to be considered just a normal dude.
Exactly. Yeah.
If Chuck was alive today, what do you think he would think of metal these days?
It all depends on which way it went. I mean, who knows? Maybe Chuck could have changed the course of that if he stuck around. It's kind of a really hard question to answer. A lot of people ask me, like, what do you think Chuck would think of, what's going on with death right now? I was like, well, that's impossible, because if he was still alive, it wouldn't be working out this way. I think metal's kind of decent right now, honestly. I think he'd probably think the same thing. The last time I talked to him about it was like, the late 90s, and stuff was kind of shitty. The whole rap rock thing was pretty huge, and he couldn't stand that. And so no, I think he would like where it's going right now.
One of the big questions that I have is if Chuck was alive, who knows? Would he have continued with Control Denied, or would he have gone back to Death eventually? Or
he might have ended up doing some kind of funky Euro lounge stuff.
jazz.
So yeah, I mean, he definitely would have continued on Control Denied for sure. I think maybe randomly here and there done a Death thing.
One final question about Chuck. We know he was an animal lover. Did he have a lot of pets, or did he prefer cats or dogs or fish or?
Yeah, he always had pets, man. He had for a long time had 2 dogs and 2 cats. I know when he was younger, he had pretty crazy kooky pets like a scorpion. Time he had this huge iguana named Zeus that was so terrible to me. Whipped me across the face one time with his tail. He always had some kind of weird little pet. I know he had a tarantula at one time. He had this huge monitor lizard, also again another mean reptile. And Chuck was moving one day, and the monitor escaped out of the tank in his car and crawled up into Chuck's dashboard and died.
What?
And
wow.
That car was death incarnate. That car smelled like death.
Because there literally was death.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of his 2 dogs, his 2 cats?
Yeah, his 2 main dogs was Heidi and Buster. Buster was a Springer Spaniel. He would call him the hippie dog, like on his thank you list.
What were the dogs' names? Something and Buster?
Heidi and Buster.
Heidi
Was a dumpster dog.
What? Oh, he rescued her.
Actually, my mom my mom was walking by a dumpster one day and heard this crying, and she found a whole sack of puppies.
Oh, what?
Threw away a sack of puppies, and I took one and Chuck took one. Yeah, with this dog Heidi. This dog was but and when Chuck went to get her neutered, something happened with her hormones, and she ended up developing this skin condition where she smelled like what Chuck said. She smelled like Doritos.
That's not funny. That's not funny.
So he had this really regal, purebred Springer Spaniel, and then this disgusting Dorito dog. He also had a cat named Sassy.
What was the breed of the other dog?
She was like Chow and Labrador, something like that, like some kind of weird mix.
And he had 2 cats, Sassy and
Pierre.
Pierre, very nice. So like a French name. What sort of colours were the cats?
Sassy was like an orange. She looked kind of like a little Bengal tiger cat, and Pierre was a calico color.
I guess there's a picture of Chuck with the orange and white one.
Yeah, that's Sassy.
But those pictures are very rare, and they're usually quite low quality. So I'm sure the fans would love more just human pictures of Chuck like that. Good quality of Chuck in his home with his pets, and people would love that, Chris.
I think, to be honest with you, the majority of the stuff that you've seen out there is the majority of the stuff. I mean, we have our own private pictures too, but there's some stuff you just want to keep,
Of course, I understand.
If something else pops up, but as far as Chuck with his pets, you guys have probably seen
what there is. Okay, Chris. So, would you like to take us out with any final message or any final word to the fans?
Well, I just want to say you're awesome, man. Like, you're a class act all the way, and thank you for your contributions, and thank you for DeathinHD. And
you're welcome.
I want to thank all the fans out there for supporting my uncle's music and keeping it going, and for believing in Death to All too. Thanks to everybody, and thanks to Relapse especially for being so killer.
Thank you very much for the time, Chris.
Of course, man. Thank you, buddy.
Okay, have a good day, man.
You as well, man.